Friends, I recently watched a film called Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and this film is directed by Lee Cronin himself. Now, since this film is quite new, its ratings are fluctuating a lot, but I can claim with confidence that it will stand as one of the best and scariest horror movies of 2026. That's why in today's video we'll walk through the film's story while breaking down its ending. Now, before we begin the video, I have one request for all of you. If you enjoy this video, please hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. So now with that said, let's roll the intro. So the film's story unfolds in a city called Aswan in Egypt, where we see a family enjoying themselves in a car. The family consisted of a mother, father, 2 sons and a daughter. And friends, here the father and kids were having a great time, but the mother remained dead serious. When this entire family returns home, their pet bird is lifeless inside the cage. At that point, this lady and her husband descend into the cellar of their own home, where we find out that the cellar held a pyramid-shaped structure, one that was pitch black in color. Either their house was literally built atop a mostly buried pyramid, or this was a miniature version of one. Either way, these people step inside where a black basalt sarcophagus awaits. Now, for those who don't know what a basalt sarcophagus is, let me tell you, a basalt sarcophagus is basically a stone coffin carved from black basalt rock. Basalt is an extremely hard and strong volcanic stone that forms after lava cools, which is what makes it so durable and heavy. In ancient times, people used such sarcophagi to preserve important or powerful figures so the body would stay safe and untouched by the passage of time. So yes, these people open this sarcophagus using chains and pulleys, and inside this sarcophagus lay a mummified form. Here the woman asks her husband if the mummy is alive, but the husband says no, which allows them both to breathe a sigh of relief. But then suddenly the mummy begins to stir, and some unnatural activity erupts. As a result, the very chains used to open the sarcophagus strike the husband square in the face and hoist him into the air. And with that, the husband is eliminated. The scene cuts here. From here, the scene shifts to Cairo, Egypt, where we see a happy, thriving family. The husband's name was Charlie Cannon, who happened to be a TV investigator, and his wife's name was Larissa, who was currently pregnant. Larissa already had 2 children named Katie and Sebastian. We viewers notice that Katie and Charlie would often communicate through Morse code. Now, one day, Larissa is out working and Charlie alone is looking after the children. Katie heads out to play in their own garden, but friends, near the garden's fence, a strange woman starts striking up a conversation with Katie. We begin to understand that this is the very same woman we saw in the opening scene with her family, and this woman was calling herself a magician. The magician and Katie begin talking, where the magician was showing Katie little magic tricks, then hands her a chocolate to eat, and friends, from their conversation, we realize that this magician has been in contact with Katie for several days. In fact, the magician's daughter Layla was also Katie's close friend. At one point, the magician says that today she has brought Katie a special fruit, one even sweeter than chocolate, and saying so she hands Katie an apple. The moment Katie takes the apple, an insect crawls out of it and slips into Katie's mouth, which causes Katie to start choking. Meanwhile, inside the house, Charlie discovers a cupboard filled with piles of the same chocolate wrappers. Seeing this, Charlie grows suspicious. Perhaps some stranger has been handing Katie chocolate. With that, Charlie immediately rushes outside to the garden to check, and he finds that the garden's fence was slightly broken and Katie was missing from the garden. Charlie immediately dashes out of the house searching for Katie, and he spots a woman who was running away carrying a child. Charlie gives chase after this woman, but just then a desert storm sweeps into the city, and because of it, Charlie is unable to catch this woman. After this, the scene arrives at a police station where Charlie and Larissa have come to file a report about their missing daughter, and here the senior detective in charge was actually suspecting Charlie and Larissa, believing these two had made their own daughter vanish. This infuriates Charlie greatly, and we viewers are also introduced to a detective named Dalia Zaki, who did not agree with her senior detective's theory. In short, Charlie and Larissa receive no real help from the police, which is why they are unable to locate Katie. Now from here, the story jumps forward 8 years, where Charlie and Larissa are still together, and neither of them has been able to forget Katie. Their son Sebastian has grown up considerably, and Larissa has had another daughter whom she has named Maud. This family now lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and along with the family, Larissa's mother Carmen also lives with them, who is a devout Catholic. Now we're shown a random scene where, near the Aswan Desert, a man is fixing a slip chain on his bicycle, and in the background a small plane crashes. This man walks over to the crash site where he finds both pilots have been eliminated, and right there beside them lay that same basalt sarcophagus. This crash is immediately reported to the authorities, and with that, 2 archaeologists bring the sarcophagus to their lab and pry it open. Inside the sarcophagus was the mummy of a child, and the moment the archaeologists begin peeling away some of the layers from this mummy suddenly comes to life. Yes, friends, it appears as if a living child had been wrapped up like a mummy and sealed inside this sarcophagus, and this child's condition was horrifying beyond words. Now, the layers or parchments the archaeologists had peeled away bore some strange inscriptions that for now we can't decipher. The most shocking part here, friends, was that this child was none other than Katie, the very one who had vanished 8 years earlier. With this development, Charlie immediately gets a call from the American embassy saying their daughter has been recovered after 8 years, although her condition is extremely fragile. Charlie and Larissa are overjoyed and they rush immediately to see Katie. Before meeting Katie, the doctors warn them that Katie no longer looks the way she once did, plus she is severely malnourished, and because of her trauma, she is in a state where she won't even speak. In fact, Katie is so unstable that even in her catatonic state, she injures herself, which is why she has to be kept on sedatives most of the time. So Charlie and Larissa have to keep their emotions in check while meeting their daughter. Finally, these two are reunited with their daughter Katie, and friends, Katie truly did look different, like a living mummy. At this point, Charlie and Larissa decide that they will take Katie back home, and right there they'll nurse her back to health, making her just as normal and healthy as before. Let me also mention one thing. After Katie's return, Detective Dahlia takes over her case, and this time she makes Charlie a promise that she will absolutely uncover exactly what happened to Katie during those 8 years. Anyway, in the next scene, we viewers watch as Charlie and Larissa bring Katie home, and together they give Katie her own room. Sebastian stood in complete shock upon seeing his sister, while Maud was thrilled to meet her sister since she had never even laid eyes on Katie before. Katie is laid down on the bed where Carmen begins reciting prayers for her. We see Katie's eyeballs shift toward Carmen, and suddenly Katie headbutts her granny Carmen, leaving Carmen drenched in crimson fluid. Then Katie lets out a bizarre scream and her body contorts across the bed in a terrifying fashion. Now that night, Katie rises from her bed and starts racing through the walls of the house like someone possessed. The walls of this house were hollow and you could enter them through hidden trapdoors and move around inside. Larissa and Charlie chase after Katie and they find that Katie is chewing down on a scorpion alive. These two force Katie to throw it up and then they lock her inside her room. After this incident, Charlie receives from Dahlia the photos of those inscription-covered parchments Katie had been wrapped in inside the sarcophagus, and Charlie begins studying them. Charlie needed to know what had happened to Katie during those 8 years, and he was willing to go to any length to find out. Now the next day, Larissa and Carmen are cleaning Katie up, grooming her, and just then Larissa notices that Katie's toenails were unnaturally long. She begins trimming these nails with a nail clipper, but when she clips the thumbnail, literally the skin of Katie's foot peels clean off. This skin looked as if it were made of the same inscription-covered parchments on the inside, and Katie reacts violently at this point, which forces them to sedate her. This incident completely shatters Larissa because she cannot bear to see her daughter in this state. On the other hand, Charlie discovers a strange sticky substance beneath the rug of the house, which was weird. When Charlie goes to check on Katie, he finds his wife deeply saddened. Larissa starts arguing with Charlie, saying that now that Katie has come back, instead of caring for her, Charlie is only focused on figuring out what happened to Katie during those 8 years. According to Larissa, Charlie is still living in the past, when he should be focused on Katie in the present. After this, Larissa tearfully begs Katie to say something, but friends, Katie here spits right onto her mother Larissa's face. Anyway, after this, when Charlie goes to pick up Katie's fallen wheelchair, that same parchment, which had just now peeled off Katie's foot, was dangling from the wheels. Charlie lifts this parchment up and carries it to his room, then separates it into its many layers filled with inscriptions. Clearly, something was written on them in an ancient language, and to decode it, Charlie heads to Albuquerque Community College, where he meets an archaeology professor named Bixler. The professor says that in his free time he will try to decode these inscriptions. Now that night, when Charlie tries to talk with his daughter Katie, Katie starts clicking her teeth in a very bizarre way. Initially, Charlie believes this is just Katie's abnormal reaction, but then he realizes that the pattern of Katie's teeth clicking is actually Morse code. Charlie immediately jots down this pattern and finds that Katie here was repeating the name of a Layla. Charlie immediately informs Detective Dahlia of this name, and Dahlia suggests that Charlie find out whether Katie knew someone named Layla 8 years ago. I mean, a relative, a friend, anyone. Hearing this, Charlie immediately opens Katie's old keepsake box filled with piles of cards, I mean every kind of card, mostly condolence cards from when Katie had disappeared. Among these cards, Charlie finally discovers one card that had been given by someone named Layla Khalil. On top of the card was that very same chocolate wrapper that Charlie had found in the drawer 8 years ago. I mean, the chocolate used to lure Katie. On top of the card was written, "You are sweeter than this chocolate." Then inside, Layla had written that Katie was her best friend and she is upset that this happened to Katie. In parallel to this, Maud hears a sound coming from Katie's room and Maud goes to listen in. Just then, Katie suddenly starts speaking to Maud in a creepy voice, saying she wants to talk to Maud, that she wants to get to know her. Maud approaches the door of Katie's room and from the other side, Katie suddenly says she wants to taste Maud. Hearing this, Maud takes off running, but Katie performs some demonic chantings that literally cause Maud to levitate in the air. A little while later, Maud drops back down, and we viewers understand that Maud has now come under the influence of the demonic entity lurking inside Katie. On the other side, that letter from Layla that Charlie had received, he sends a photo of it to Dahlia, and Dahlia manages to figure out from the postage stamp that this letter came from Aswan, Egypt. Now, within the 40-kilometer radius around Aswan, there was only a single post office, and because of this, it was difficult for Dahlia to pinpoint exactly where the letter had come from. Still, Dahlia studies the satellite images of the area and she spots a nectarine fruit orchard smack in the middle of the Aswan desert, which was weird. In fact, friends, that plane crash that happened, the one that revealed the sarcophagus, at that crash site, nectarine fruit had also been spotted. From this, Dahlia deduces that the culprit who kidnapped Katie must live in the same nectarine growing area. So with that, Dahlia heads out alone to search that entire area. Meanwhile, if we turn back to Charlie, he goes to meet the professor, who by now had managed to decode the inscriptions to some extent. The professor tells him that this language is extremely ancient, predating even 3000 BC, and that the inscriptions are a small piece of a much larger ceremonial binding. Out of the 7 inscriptions Charlie had given to the professor, one word kept repeating over and over, which was Nazmaranian. Charlie asks what this Nazmaranian is, and in response, the professor plays a recording that covered ancient Egyptian demonology. In the lecture recording, the narrator was explaining that Nazmaranian was an entity that lurked among humans like a shadow. It could turn a father against his own son, then force a mother to bury her own children, which is why Nazmaranian is also called the destroyer of family. Like a sickness of the soul, Nazmaranian would pass from one human body into another. It spread like a cancer and would wipe out entire communities. But then around 2000 BC, Nazmaranian's reign of terror nearly came to an end, and after that, no related incidents or stories ever surfaced. Only one rumor remained, that Nazmaranian had been trapped through an ancient ritual, because of which it is now bound. Hearing this, Charlie was shocked because he was beginning to wonder if perhaps this very Nazmaranian was what lurked inside Katie. On the other side, Dahlia heads to that area of Aswan where she suspected Katie's kidnapper might be residing. Dahlia spots a house in this area that currently had no one inside, and with that, Dahlia begins investigating the house. She descends into the cellar of the house, and friends, this is the very same house we saw in the opening scene, I mean the one with the black pyramid. Dahlia performs a full sweep of this place, and she clearly understands that some kind of ritual had taken place here, one that perhaps Katie herself had been a part of. After completing her search, when Dahlia heads back upstairs, that very same magician lady had already arrived. The magician attacks Dahlia, but at the critical moment, Dahlia shoots the magician down. After this, Dahlia notices another girl outside who bolts the moment she spots Dahlia. Dahlia gives chase, and she finds this girl in one spot digging into the ground with her bare hands. In this girl's hands was a box containing a VCR tape, and Katie's name was written on the tape. Dahlia seizes it, and along with it, she takes the girl into custody. Dahlia questions this girl, where the girl reveals her name is Layla. Yes, friends, the very same Layla who used to be Katie's friend, and we understand that the magician is Layla's mother. Layla's tongue had been cut out, which is why she clearly could not speak, but still she reveals that she had tried multiple times to expose her mother, and that's when her mother did this to her tongue. These people had been moving the sarcophagus out of Aswan because the area was about to flood, but the brothers who were transporting the sarcophagus by plane, their plane had crashed, meaning, friends, the 2 pilots who didn't survive in the plane crash were Layla's brothers, and these are the ones we saw in the opening scene. I mean, the magician had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Well, it's this Layla and her brothers. After hearing all this, Dahlia tells Layla to write everything down, exactly what her mother used to do, and then she also watches Katie's tape. After getting all this information, Dahlia tries to contact Charlie so she can tell him the truth about what actually happened to Katie during those 8 years. Charlie wasn't picking up Dahlia's calls, and friends, later in this video I'll tell you everything about this ritual, so please watch this video until the end. From here, the scene focuses on Maud, where she had completely changed. She says nasty things to her teacher, which results in Charlie being called to the school. Charlie takes Maud and begins driving her home. And here in the car too, Maud was making crude gestures toward her brother, which was weird. In parallel with this, Carmen walks into Katie's room to pray for her, but suddenly Katie speaks in a demonic way and launches an attack on Carmen. Carmen can't do much because Katie unnaturally seals the room shut. Then, while levitating in the air, she is attacking Carmen. At one point, Katie cackles in a demonic fashion and supernaturally wraps Carmen's cross around her neck, then uses that same cross to lift Carmen into the air. Then she supernaturally flings Carmen so hard that Carmen smashes through the window and falls below. At that very moment, Charlie had arrived home with his daughter Maud and son Sebastian in the car, and Carmen's form lands on their car. As if that weren't enough, this area was one where coyotes frequently roamed, and 4 coyotes suddenly begin chewing on Carmen's form. Everyone was shocked by this gruesome sight, but friends, Maud was cackling and giggling watching all of this. In short, Carmen is no longer with us, which is the biggest shock of all to Larissa. In the next scene, we see Carmen's wake ceremony, and strange things happen here too. First, Maud pulls out every one of her own teeth, and then from Carmen's lifeless form, she takes out her dentures and slides them into her own mouth, which was very weird. Similarly, Katie starts manipulating her brother Sebastian with twisted words like, "You're the one who sent me out to play in the garden, which is why I vanished and ended up this way." This begins to affect Sebastian while Katie smashes through the floor of her sealed room and crawls along the ceiling of the floor below. Then, right in front of all the guests, she leaps into Carmen's coffin and kind of starts devouring her. She was even licking Carmen's crimson fluid. All the guests were shocked by this sight, and every one of them takes off. Larissa and Charlie too were shaken by these incidents, and Larissa was so distraught that she no longer wanted to keep Katie inside the house. Anyway, after this, these people tie Katie down to her wheelchair and they put multiple locks on her room. In fact, one person would always stand guard outside the room so that Katie couldn't escape by any means. Katie was making strange noises here and lifting her wheelchair slightly off the ground before slamming it back down. At this very point, Dahlia arrives at their home, and she had brought with her that Katie tape. Dahlia wanted to show this tape to Charlie and Larissa because on this tape the magician had properly documented exactly what had been done to Katie and why. So yes, we begin watching this tape in which the magician reveals that her family guards an ancient secret, one where they keep the Nazmaranian demon bound. To control this entity, a ritual mummification is used where bandages inscribed with scriptures are wrapped around living skin. As these scriptures are removed, the demon grows more and more powerful. Now, since this demon cannot be eliminated, it is bound and kept inside human hosts. And when one human host begins to fade, Nazmaranian is transferred into another host. The magician was part of an ancient cult, and their duty was to keep Nazmaranian under control by providing it with living hosts. When the entity is wrapped in those special scripture-inscribed bindings, the demon stays inside that mortal body until it naturally expires. That's why a child makes the ideal host, because they remain alive for much longer, which maximizes the delay before the ritual needs to be performed again. Using an elderly person as host would mean the demon comes close to escaping every 5-10 years. This is pure practical cult logic, maximum containment for minimum ritual frequency. In the video, we viewers clearly witness this ritual, where some cult members were performing chantings, and Katie is suspended above the old host's form. Because of the chantings, the old host kind of expels, and from its mouth a black liquid flows into Katie's body. Through this process, Nazmaranian transferred itself into Katie. Now ideally, these people would have kept Katie alive inside that sarcophagus forever, until Katie passed on from old age. Then a new host would have been chosen for Nazmaranian, but friends, because Aswan village was about to flood, that's the reason the magician's sons were transporting the sarcophagus by plane. Then the plane crashed, and what happened next? Well, you already know. We can also say that having the Nazmaranian host out in the open was extremely dangerous, because it would once again go on to destroy both family and the entire community. In fact, we're already witnessing its effects on Charlie's family. This also explains why, after 2000 3000 BC, all stories of Nazmaranian suddenly vanished, because perhaps from that point on it has been kept bound through this ritual and transferred to new living hosts over the generations. So yes, after watching this video, Larissa and Charlie are deeply disturbed, and in fact Charlie slips into an utterly shocked state. Parallel to all of this, Katie had taken control of her brother Sebastian, where Sebastian was smashing his own head against things. Then, at Katie's command, Sebastian smashes through the small entryway to her room and begins peeling away the remaining scriptures from Katie's skin. Because of this, the Nazmaranian inside Katie grows tremendously powerful and becomes fully unleashed. So yes, finally Katie and the demon Nazmaranian inside her were completely free, and Katie is shrieking as she levitates in the air. In fact, a storm-like aura had formed around Katie. As if that weren't enough, Sebastian and Maud too were now under the demon's influence, and even the fallen Granny Carmen had reanimated in a possessed state and walked right back into the house. At this point, a brutal brawl breaks out, where Sebastian charges at his own mother to attack her, and Larissa is fleeing through the hollow walls to escape him. Similarly, Granny Carmen was attacking Dahlia, and Katie herself was fighting Charlie. Katie was literally biting into Charlie and trying to devour him, while Carmen spits a scorpion out of her mouth and forces it into Dahlia's mouth. This scorpion begins boring a hole through Dahlia's throat and starts emerging on the outside, but Dahlia somehow reaches into her own mouth and yanks the scorpion out. Then she attacks Carmen and somehow escapes. Larissa too secretly strikes her own son so she can get away from him. Meanwhile, the Nazmaranian entity inside Katie was telling Charlie that no one can save your daughter now, I am her daddy now. But just then Charlie grips Katie tightly, and then he tells Dahlia to start the chant from the ritual video. Dahlia couldn't speak because of the hole in her throat, but she somehow presses her finger over the hole and begins the chantings. These chantings start the host transfer ritual, and finally Nazmaranian exits Katie's mouth and enters Charlie's mouth. Meaning, friends, Charlie sacrificed himself to save his daughter Katie, where Nazmaranian now resides inside Charlie. Now, whenever the demon transfers from one host to another, there is a brief cooling period where it remains inactive. During this cooling period, the host is sealed. I mean, those inscribed parchments are applied to the host's skin so that Nazmaranian stays under control. Now, the same would need to be done with Charlie, and friends, we clearly see that the moment Nazmaranian had left Katie's body, Katie begins behaving normally again. Before the scene cuts, we see Katie and Charlie lying on the floor where both of them were holding hands. In fact, Maud and Sebastian were now normal as well. Now in the next scene, Charlie is sealed inside a coffin-like structure, meaning he has been bound, and we see a recovered Katie tapping I love you in Morse code. From inside, Charlie also taps back I love you all. Over time, Katie recovers fully, and in fact, Maud and Sebastian too had become perfectly fine. But friends, inside Charlie, Nazmaranian still resides and he remains imprisoned. Then we're shown a scene where Larissa calls Dahlia and says she wants to talk about Charlie. Then arrives the twist in the story where we're shown a jail scene, and inside this jail is the magician. Yes, friends, the magician is alive, meaning she had survived Dahlia's bullet and is currently in jail. On the magician's back, we can also see the bullet wound, and here inside the magician's jail cell, a nurse walks in. As it turns out, Larissa had come in disguised as this nurse, where she gives the magician a sedative. Then Dahlia wheels in Charlie in a wheelchair, and then Dahlia says, "You know what's coming next." Dahlia begins the chantings, and we viewers understand that these people are about to transfer the demon from Charlie into the magician. And right here the film concludes. So friends, that was the story of the film The Mummy, and the film story is fairly clear. Still, I'd like to discuss a few theories related to this film now. The first question that pops into every viewer's mind is, does a demon called Nazmaranian actually exist in ancient Egyptian mythology? Well friends, I did my research on this, and I want to make one thing crystal clear. Nazmaranian is a completely fictional entity that Lee Cronin crafted specifically for this movie. No such demon exists in real ancient Egyptian mythology. Yes, Egyptian demonology is incredibly rich. According to Swansea University's Ancient Egyptian Demonology Project, over 4,000 demons have been recorded, but Nazmaranian is not among them. You won't find this name in any papyrus, in the Book of the Dead, or even in the Greek magical papyri. Reviews have also stated outright that Nazmaranian is a made-up demon, just like the one in The Exorcist, but wrapped in Egyptian bandages. So this is Cronin's own creation, which he has built with a Middle Eastern linguistic flavor to give it an authentic sound. Now let's talk about the ritual. I mean, why this ritual is performed and why children are chosen. According to the film's lore, Nazmaranian cannot be destroyed, it can only be bound. That's why a living host is required so that the demon remains imprisoned inside. Now, when the host perishes or their body begins to decay, the protection spell, which is actually baked into the host's skin through those inscribed bandages, begins to weaken. That's why the magician's cult chooses children, because a child's body lasts much longer, which pushes off the need to redo the ritual by 50 to 60 years. Using an elderly person as host would mean the demon would come dangerously close to escaping every 5-10 years. This is pure practical cult logic, maximum containment for minimum ritual frequency. Another interesting detail, in this ritual, the living host is not mummified, but rather wrapped alive in bandages carrying inscriptions. These bandages are the real jail for the demon. The sarcophagus is merely a container. The real cage is those inscribed skin wrappings. That's why when Katie peels those skin strips from her foot, she is actually breaking the bars of her own prison. This symbolism is pretty clever, friends. The film mentions that around 2000 BC, Nazmaranian's attacks suddenly vanished. Now reflect on this timeline. 2000 BC is roughly the beginning of the Middle Kingdom in ancient Egypt. And interestingly, in real Egyptian history too, it was during the Middle Kingdom 2030-1640 BC that art and texts about demonology became far more explicit. Protection spells, amulets, and binding rituals all developed during this era. So Cronin has aligned his made-up mythology with a real historical period, which is incredibly clever world building. This also suggests that perhaps the magician's cult has been carrying out this ritual generationally for thousands of years, maybe choosing a new host every 50 to 70 years. Layla and her brothers were the next generation of custodians who weren't quite ready yet. Now, Lee Cronin himself said in an interview that many of this film's ideas came to him from his own mother's passing, who didn't survive past the last day of filming Evil Dead Rise. Cronin says that The Mummy initially didn't interest him at all, but working on this film helped him process the grief of losing his mother. So friends, now think about this, a film whose core concept is your loved one returns, but she's no longer the one she used to be. This is literally a metaphor for grief. Katie's return from the sarcophagus, the parents realizing that the daughter who came back is now different, and then searching for their lost child within her. All of this is actually the stages of the grieving process: denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance. The film says that sometimes what is lost doesn't fully return, and when it does, it comes back in a different form that utterly breaks you apart. Now here's something interesting, friends. Lee Cronin himself confirmed in an interview with Collider that The Mummy and Evil Dead Rise exist in the same shared universe, meaning Nazmaranian and the Deadites who are unleashed from the Naturum Demonto in Evil Dead, all of them are part of the same demonic reality. The proof of this is a hidden Easter egg tucked inside the film, and Lily Sullivan's cameo, the actress who played Beth in Evil Dead Rise. In this film, she appears as Maud's teacher. So friends, speaking of the Easter egg, in the film there's that archaeology professor Bixler, played by Mark Mitchinson, whose surname itself is the real connection to Evil Dead Rise. Lee Cronin has himself confirmed in his Collider interview that if you look closely at this professor's last name, he may turn out to be a distant relative of some key characters from Evil Dead Rise. Cronin has said there's always going to be a bit of crossover, meaning he is building his own shared Croninverse where the Deadites of Evil Dead and ancient Egyptian demons like Nazmaranian coexist within one reality. Besides that, Lily Sullivan's cameo as Maud's teacher literally ties this universe together, because she's the very one who played Beth in Evil Dead Rise. One more bonus Easter egg is the Babe 1995 movie poster hanging in Katie's pink bedroom, which Cronin put in because that bedroom was meant to be a hand-me-down across generations, perhaps dating back to Larissa's own teenage years. So the next time you watch this film, pay special attention to the professor's name. So yes, we can say that Lee Cronin is crafting his own Croninverse, a world where ancient Egyptian demons, the Deadites of Naturum Demonto, and perhaps even more monsters yet to come will all inhabit one single interconnected reality. At the film's ending, when Dahlia and Larissa transfer Nazmaranian into the magician, that scene is thematically very deep. The magician herself is a destroyer of family, the very one who separated Katie from her mother, cut out her own daughter Layla's tongue, and lost her own sons in a plane crash. So Nazmaranian entering the magician's body is actually the demon finding its rightful resting place, a person who is already the enemy of her own family, the destroyer of family demon residing inside her. That's poetic justice. Plus, there's a dark theory that the tattoos on the magician's hands resemble the classic 1999 Mummy movie's home dye ritual markings. This is possibly a small tribute to the Universal Monster universe. Now, Cronin himself himself has admitted that this film is heavily inspired by Poltergeist 1982 and CC in 1995. From Poltergeist came the domestic warmth and family under supernatural attack angle, while from CC came that dark investigative thriller vibe. But reviewers have pointed out even more influences: The Exorcist, Possession and Ancient Evil, Hereditary, family trauma horror, The Babadook, Grief as Monster, and Pet Sematary, The Lost Child Coming Back Wrong. Another reviewer has even spotted the masks from Ben Wheatley's kill list on the faces of the magician's cult members. So friends, this film is a horror greatest hits collection, which Cronin has blended together with Evil Dead's brutality. Overall, this film was really well done, and you should definitely go watch it in theaters. Also, if you have any doubts in your mind, feel free to ask in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we keep bringing videos like these to you. Peace.